Welcome to Just In Case, Case UK's podcast, where we choose to help build lives, not patients. Hello, I'm Chrissie from Case UK. Welcome to our podcast. In our last podcast, you heard from Russell and Ian, and today now I'll be taking over the podcast moving forward, so you'll be hearing a lot more from me over the coming months. I've been working for Case UK for around 6 years now, and when I started with Case UK, I used to help run the contact centre, and when I say help run the contact centre, it was me sat on my own in my house, dealing with an out-of-hours phone helpline, kind of wondering what on earth I was doing at the time, if I'm being honest. And now here we are, 6 years down the line, the amazing things that we're doing with Case UK, including this podcast, and we've got some wonderful speakers for you. So I am here today with Sandy Cooper, and Sandy, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Hi, Chrissie. I'm good, thank you. So I'm Sandy. I'm up here in sunny Manchester at the moment, which is a bit strange to have some sun in Manchester. My role is programme lead at Able Futures, Case UK. And I've been with the company about, just coming up to a year now, and it's flown really fast.
Oh, wow, that has gone really quickly.
It has. I can remember my first day with you, Chrissie.
I remember that day fondly. It was a good day.
It was a little bit nerve-wracking, but I think I'm into the flow now, definitely.
We're kindreds with our curly hair.
Yeah, although I've tied it back today.
So, today, the topic that we're going to talk about is self-care. So when it comes to self-care, Sandy, I'm wondering if you could let us know a little bit about the things that you've done in the past, the work that you've done, and we will get into the topic then of self-care in a moment. So
my background is invariably long. I'm showing my age here. I've been in the care, nursing, occupational therapy space for approximately 30 years. I started when I was, about 12 years old in my mum's care home. I knew I wanted to be a nurse at that time. And I used to make cups of teas for the old people, or elders, shall we call them. And then eventually after that, I went on to work in care homes after I'd finished school. Very much loving care of people, supporting people. And then obviously I had a little one, which kind of put a little bit of a damper on my career at that point.
They have a tendency to do that, though.
Yeah, very, very much in it. Very much love my boys, but just had to spend some time at home for a little while there. And then I went back to university as a mature student. I worked for NHS professionals. I worked as a support worker. I worked in mental health support work as well. Worked with people with challenging behaviours, learning difficulties, some really, really, really challenging areas. So obviously that gave me a good grounding for mental health. And then I went on to work and study. I went to study at the University of Manchester. I did my professional studies in nursing. Whilst I was doing that, I was working on the wards as well as a support worker. So continuing to work. Obviously, you can imagine very busy as a mum, children at home, husband, house, academic work, all the rest of it. So self-care was very, very important there, very, very difficult to align as well with all those different demands on me. I managed to do it, of course, and then came out the other end and worked as a research nurse for a little while. I worked on the general wards. I did agency work. There's so many different wards that I worked on because of nursing and because of the intensity of nursing. As you probably know about self-care in nursing, or should I say lack of self-care in nursing, because you don't have any time when you're on the wards. You don't have any time to look after yourself. So found that very difficult. Perhaps the younger ones found it a little bit easier, but at that time, like I said, I was a mature student, so it was a little bit more difficult for me. And I decided that I'd go and do something different, not completely different. That was when I went and retrained again as an occupational therapist in 2018. Wow. Yeah, all the time working on the wards again. Busy mum. One of my children has autism. One's query ADHD, again, so very busy, lots of academia, lots of looking after the home, very small amounts of self-care actually. And it was only when I did my occupational therapy training that I actually took self-care really seriously, because I understood the importance of it then and how that affects your physical and mental health. And so I qualified as an occupational therapist. I went to work in vocational rehabilitation, so supporting people back to work when they've been poorly or significant disability, mental health, physical health. Then I went on to work in occupational health, again, supporting people returning to work, in work. And obviously with the rise in the mental health concerns recently, since the pandemic, seen a sharp rise in mental health concerns. And a lot of the patients I was getting through, a lot of the problem was not having time for self-care, managing themselves, working all the time, all the things that we all should be doing. And that was very, very apparent in that. And then I decided to take my own self-care into my own hands, because whilst I was working in occupational health, I was doing close to 7 cases a day and back to back, doing assessments and writing reports for people, making sure they got the best care and that they were supported appropriately, when actually I wasn't taking care of myself, because I'd be extremely fatigued at the end of the day, which brings me on to perimenopause and how because that tied into it. And I made the choice to join Case UK. I was offered to have an interview with Ian, and I was offered the post of assistant team lead at the time. And here I am nearly 12 months later at Case UK.
Thank you so much. That's an absolutely amazing journey. The things that you've done, the experiences, all of the different work experiences, absolutely fantastic. And it's great having you on the team. You're an absolute asset, which is always really amazing. So thank you so much. And thank you for sharing with us as well, because I think it's really important that when we talk about self-care, it's understanding that actually we need to make sure that we look after ourselves as well. And I'm going to pose a question to you, because when we talk about self-care, and I will come back to some of the things that you mentioned as well in the introduction of yourself. But when it comes to self-care, what do we mean by the term self-care? When we hear that, what is it that we mean?
So for me, I think it's being intentional with nurturing your physical, your mental and your emotional well-being, looking at prioritising your activities, your behaviours, utilising behaviours that promote your health, looking at happiness and balance in your life, or as an occupational therapist we would call it occupational balance to give it the occupational therapy name. So it's about balancing all those aspects of your life.
Fantastic, thank you. And what are the consequences if we don't look after ourselves?
Well, I've experienced this myself, obviously. If you're neglecting your self-care, obviously you can lead to, and I've seen it in practice and I've seen it with myself, you can lead to physical exhaustion, emotional depletion, increased stress levels, which obviously has a knock-on effect on the physical as well as the mental, can decrease productivity. It can definitely heighten your vulnerability to mental health issues such as anxiety and depression, which then obviously has a knock-on effect on everything else in your life. So there's lots of consequences to not looking after yourself, not engaging in self-care.
Absolutely, and I completely agree with you. I think when we don't look after ourselves, there are so many things that can be affected, and we as individuals can be affected, and it can have a knock-on effect to those that we love as well. And it can have a knock-on effect in our personal lives, in our home lives, in our work lives. It can really impact on everything, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I know if I don't, probably going ahead here, but if I don't get enough sleep, for example, I know that I'm going to have a pretty rubbish day the next day in work. And my work suffers as a consequence of that.
And absolutely, sleep. I actually spent the morning delivering a sleep support session, because sleep is really important when it comes to our well-being. And part of self-care is ensuring that we do things so that we get enough sleep, that we get quality sleep, because it does have an impact.
Absolutely it does. And I think for myself at the moment, obviously, I don't know if we're okay to go to talk about perimenopause, but obviously a lady of my age currently going through perimenopause, that sleep is affected. And again, it does have a knock-on effect. But thankfully, my colleagues are so supportive that I can just say, I've not had a good night last night. I'm probably going to work a little bit later today or something along those lines. But yeah, it really does affect everything. You get brain fog, you're fatigued, you can't concentrate, you get ratty quickly. It just affects everything. It affects your obesity levels and everything. Heart, cardiovascular, the lot.
Yes, and it does. It has an impact. And Sandy, we will absolutely be getting you back for another session to talk about menopause and perimenopause, because it's really key, and it's a key factor in women's health. And there will be some other topics that we discuss as well in other areas around men's health, women's health. And perimenopause is absolutely so important for us to discuss, because you can't always do the testing to show that you're perimenopausal, but you certainly feel the feelings. And I know that it's something that I experience as well, and it can sometimes be so unpleasant.
Absolutely. And I know a few of my colleagues are experiencing it at the moment, and I've been lucky enough to provide them with information and suggest that the right questions to ask their GP, such as the NICE guidelines, etc., and they found it really useful. Just going in there with that little bit of knowledge of what to ask for. But yeah, I've got personal insight and professional insight as well. So that's really helpful.
That is helpful.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good tip as well. When we write down the concerns that we need to mention when we go to the GP, that's always a really helpful tip. So that's fantastic. So in relation to self-care, we've talked about the importance of practicing self-care. We've introduced that idea. Everyone has a different method. What do we think are some of the more helpful methods that we know of that can provide us support when it comes to self-care? If I start you off, I know for me, self-care is about weaving music into my life. It is so important for me. I love going to gigs. I love listening to music. If I'm having a particularly bad day, I will sit and learn song lyrics, because that is something that for me is so much self-care, because it makes me feel really good. So what sort of things do you do for your self-care?
So I enjoy meditation. I know there's some evidence for meditation, and I really do like that. Just sitting there in my own space. I like journaling, documenting things down, and then obviously looking at them later on and going, oh, actually, I've done better there, or what's worked this time, what hasn't worked. I love spending time in nature very much. Every day on my lunch break, I take my dog for a walk. Just listening to the water. I know that again, there's lots of evidence for walking in nature. There's lots of group therapy, and I've suggested that previously to patients who enjoy that. Even gardening, doing a little bit of gardening, that's got lots of evidence behind it as well. So I do that. I do exercise as well. Nearly every night, I go to the gym. I think it's really important, especially as we age as well. Sorry to keep bringing that in, but it's really, really important, especially with women, building up our bones, and just having that time for myself is really important, especially if I've had a really busy day with like today, for example. I've had a really busy day today. We've had a lot of urgent priorities that I've needed to action. And so today, my non-negotiable will be that I will go to the gym tonight. And that really, really helps me, just to have a swim or a run on the treadmill or lift some weights. That's my non-negotiable. I have to do that. It helps me to gain clarity, to be able to think about the day and sort of decompress and reflect. I find that really helpful. So yeah, definitely the gym is my main one, I would say. Yeah.
And I think that brings me on to a really key question. What makes practicing self-care difficult? Do you find that there's any stigmas attached to some self-care activities? I'll give you another example here. A lot of the time, and in the years that I've been working in mental health, supporting people, one of the biggest barriers that I've noticed that people often talk about is how self-care can be selfish. And we shouldn't be looking after ourselves because we should be looking after everyone else. And then people are put off by looking after themselves because of these stigmas. Do you find anything like that? Or do you find there are other barriers to practicing self-care?
No, I would agree. I think the societal pressures, cultural norms, for example, being a mum, oh, you've got to do everything for your children. You've got to make sure they're all looked after, and your husband's okay, and even at work as well. For example, if you put your calendar lunch, I'm out of office. I'm out of office. Do not contact me because I can't be reached. And then sometimes, for example, in my old role, it would be, oh, I see you're out of office is on. Well, yeah, I'm going for my lunch break because I need to go for my lunch break. I need to eat. Again, it's self-care. I need to eat to have energy and to feel good about myself. But I also need to go and walk. I don't want to get cramp in my legs and blood clots and all the rest of it. It's really, really important. It putting those barriers in place. Sometimes people can say things like, oh, you're being funny because I'm not working past that time, or I'm not coming in before that time. But yeah, it can be seen as selfish or indulgent. And it's about having the confidence to say, no, this is my time and these are my boundaries. So yeah, I found difficulties with that. But within Case UK, it's actually been the opposite. I've been able to put my boundaries firmly in place. This is what I'm doing. That's my lunch. And I think that's because of the flexibility as well of the role, and the support from my colleagues. We're all very much aligned in that space. But I've definitely seen it in my old roles. And being a mum as well, it's I think as my children have got older, I'm very much now, like, I'm going off to the gym, make your own tea, stuff in the cupboard, whereas when they were younger, if you did that, it was sort of frowned upon. Oh, you've not fed your children. Like, obviously my husband to be there, but it's like, oh, mum's gone out and mum's gone to the gym. Well, she should be at home cooking, and well, why can't my husband do it? He's the dad as well. So yeah, society I think as a whole can be quite negative sometimes. Definitely,
I would agree with that. And I think that sometimes we need to look at challenging, don't we? And we need to challenge the stigmas and flip the narrative so that it becomes more positive. And the more positive that we feel about things, that actually feeds into our self-care. Our ability to look after ourselves becomes better, and the cultures that we adopt. And going back to what you said about the workplace can be such a difficult environment if the culture doesn't adopt a healthy boundary and a healthy ethos where we're able to actually pop things in our calendar and say, no, that time is taken out because that is me stating I'm going for lunch. That's me stating I'm going for a walk. That's me taking some time because I know that I need some time to look after myself, and working what we can around then the things that we know will be beneficial for us.
Yeah, I very much advocate that to my colleagues as well. The VRCs that I work with, to put time in the diary to have their lunch. When I do supervision with them, I'm very adamant about that. Take the time to have your breaks, to have something to eat, to have a drink, go outside, get some fresh air, and even if me as their line manager, if I ask them, can you do supervision, for example, say no. If you're busy, then say no. That's in my calendar for a reason. That's absolutely fine. Very much advocate for that with my colleagues. Practice what I preach.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes we almost think if our managers asked us something, we can go back. And I know for myself, I go back to previous roles where I think I must be available all the time if my managers ask me something. And so we feel this almost sense of need to prioritise something despite our health. And we need to recognise that regardless of who's asking, we're okay to say no if we need to.
Yeah, but I've actually found
as long as it's within reason.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, if something's urgent, like if I'm dealing with something safeguarding or something like that, that's really urgent, then obviously I would prioritise those things. But 9 times out of 10, we're able to just say, they're able to say, I'm really sorry, Sandy, I can't make that appointment. I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Okay. And it goes the same for my line manager as well. Very much so. So it's about trying to develop that as well within different workplaces as well. But it's nice to have. It really is.
Absolutely. And it's good to promote. It's good to have healthy working practices. And I think that whether we're in work, whether we're at home, it's good to have healthy working practices. And I know I've spoken to many people who struggle with certain ways of working. So if they're working from home, people around them expect them to always be available and always be free and almost see that, but you're working from home, you're not really working. You can be available to do whatever you want and drop whatever you need to in order to come and help me. So it can happen from our personal life as well. And it's the same as if we're perceived to not be as busy as other people might think, or if other people see us as being available when we're not, and we're trying to do things to look after ourselves, friends, family, they might try and take off that time from us. But we need to make sure that we put healthy boundaries in with those relationships as well in order to look after ourselves.
My family I've seen that since working from home, actually, because obviously when I worked on the ward, you couldn't get a hold of me. You couldn't just say, Mum, can you just pop me to the cafe, or Mum, can you just pop me to college, give me a lift. But I found I've had to put some boundaries in place whereby I've said, actually, I am at work, so I know I can't just take you to college, or I can't just pick you up, because I am actually at work and I'm busy. Even as far as putting a notice on my door, I'm at work. I'm busy, don't come in.
Yeah.
So yeah, like a physical barrier as well, Yeah, absolutely. So as an occupational therapist, I would probably be suggesting somebody start small and building consistent routines, such as, for example, sleep, starting off with a good bedtime routine, making sure that there's no screen time, building that up, or in the morning, getting up a little bit earlier each time. Again, it's just about starting off small and being consistent, not expecting to do the whole thing at once. And if you're not able to do it on one day, just go back and do it the next day. You can start it off. That would be my advice anyway.
Brilliant. I think it really helps with mindset, doesn't it? If we set ourselves small, achievable goals, then it becomes much more realistic to achieve, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, those goals will be different for everybody. So it's focusing on what's important to you. So, for example, like with my son, it was important for him to be getting up early to get to college on time, because it was really stressing him out. And not going to sleep early at night, is affecting him. But I think self-care in general, it's different for everybody, isn't it? It might be boundaries for one person. It might be exercising more for another person. It can come in all different shapes and sizes. It's just looking at something that helps you, relaxes you, gives you a sense of renewal, really, and just prioritizing yourself without guilt or hesitating to do it.
I think that our mindset and some of the self-belief that we might hold can play a big part, and that in itself is a whole other podcast as well when it comes to the mindset and the way that we focus in on things. But when it comes to self-care in particular, it is so important that we, like I said earlier, flip that narrative so that we look at it as a positive and think about it as a need. Much like we need oxygen, we need self-care.
Yeah. Adopting those good self-care practices, taking proactive steps to prioritise your physical and mental and emotional health, putting the self-care practice into your daily lives, like drinking an extra glass of water a day and building it up, making sure you're getting up from your desk at lunchtime, making sure you're taking your breaks, making sure you're taking your walks. If you want to read a chapter of your book every day, then do that. If you want to listen to your music, if that's what you need, then do it. Just build it up and making sure that you have that time to do that. If it, putting it in a calendar, put it in your diary to do it if you need that. Again, I advocate that to all our VLCs, just put that time in your diary, just book it out, make sure you're doing it, it's there, that's your time. Take it and use it.
Absolutely. It has been so wonderful to speak with you, Sandy. You're so knowledgeable, your experiences that you've got, all of the things that you've done with work in your personal life, so much knowledge there. And I appreciate there are so many things that we can talk about. But is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with?
Just for people to reflect on your own self-care habits and evaluate whether they're prioritising their own needs, and look at the importance of treating yourself with kindness as well, compassion and understanding, rather than being harsh with yourself, because I think we're all guilty of that. Being aware of your own needs as well, physically, mentally, emotionally, and check in with yourselves and honouring yourself for those needs, I would say, and putting your boundaries in place as well. Really, really important, and stick to it if you can.
So it's been absolutely amazing talking about self-care, and I think it's really important to mention, as we're talking about self-care, that there are services that are also available that can provide some support. And within Case UK, we've got a number of different services that can provide support for people when they're struggling with their mental health, and we can provide them with tools and tips in order to input helpful self-care measures. And Sandy, you said at the beginning about the programme that you work for and the role that you lead, and I think it would be really great, if it's okay with you, if you could tell us a little bit about the Able Futures programme and how that helps people, who's eligible, what sort of areas does it cover?
So I manage the Able Futures programme. It's across Wales and South West England. It's funded by the Department of Work and Pension to aid the employed with their mental health. It's 9 months support for people in work. They work with one of our vocational rehabilitation consultants over 9 months. They have an hour's support each month. They can self-refer themselves, or they can be referred through their work or a health professional or any other person in that line of work. They work on many things such as lifestyle, confidence building, CVs, employment, anything that the person wants to work on where they may be having functional concerns. And that's something that they discuss with the VRC at the beginning of the programme. We can give you the link to that as well.
There are other areas within the UK, so we cover within Case UK, Wales and the southwest of England, and there are opportunities as well if you go onto the Able Futures website to look at the other areas, should you be living in one of those areas. You can check out all of the different services, you can refer yourself into the Able Futures programme, you can refer yourself into the in-work support programme, or you can refer yourself to the out-of-work support, and we have a number of different offerings. Just check out the website, check out Facebook, check out our social media. If you look for Case UK, you will find us. Sandy, cannot wait until the next one. That is absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Speak soon.
Thank you for listening to Case UK's podcast, Just In Case. Please make sure that you subscribe to this podcast in your preferred podcast app. That way you'll never miss a future episode. And be sure to follow us on social media. Check out our website, www.case-uk.co.uk. And don't forget, we're here for you just in case.
Blue sky, sweet and fresh.